First Nations, Métis, and Inuit children taken from their families, forced to attend residential schools. Thousands died there, their graves and stories now being rediscovered. Survivors emerged with severed links to their own families and cultures. Many carried the trauma of abuse, and all that pain got passed down. Today is a step on the long road to healing. A path of resilience for so many now is one of reconciliation we all must take. An opportunity to learn from the past and together build a brighter future. Thank you for joining us. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. We are in Ottawa today, just west of Parliament Hill at Le Breton Flats, which is the large grassy area directly in front of the Canadian War Museum. This is unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. Now, this day was created in response to one of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, number 80. It called for a federal statutory holiday to be created to honor residential school survivors, their families and communities, and to keep the legacy of residential schools at the heart of reconciliation. In about 30 minutes' time, we're going to bring you a 1-hour gathering that is produced by APTN, that's the Aboriginal People's Television Network, and the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation. It's called Remembering the Children, because of course, this is, it always was, and it... So there are observances planned all across the country today. Many, as you can see, are already underway, including an event on Parliament Hill in Ottawa. So the ceremony began this morning with a round dance. The participants moved clockwise, then counterclockwise. It's a symbol, it said, of that balance between life and death. That is a way to remember those who survived residential schools and crucially, those who did not.
I want to say to each and every one of you survivors, you're beautiful. Thank you for surviving. Thank you for your resilience. We honor you each and every day.
Organizers of the ceremony honored residential school survivors with eagle feathers. They symbolize respect, strength, courage, and wisdom. And in some Indigenous cultures, they also represent a step forward and a hope for the future.
Let's sing for the children.
And then there are the kids. While survivors were honored, the ceremony also shone a light on those children who never came home. And that ceremony concluded just moments ago with a spirit walk that ended right here at Le Breton Flats. Participants were all invited to bring what has become a symbol and a reminder of the legacy of residential schools, and those are children's shoes. Now, joining us throughout today's program is Nigan St. Clair in Winnipeg. Nigan is a professor, acting head of the Department of Indigenous Studies at the University of Manitoba. Nigan, thank you so much for being here. I know we've been talking a little bit this morning, you and I'm just curious, as you watch this sunny day begin, I'm wondering how you're feeling about it.
So bonjour, Adrienne, great to be here. This is a complicated week for many of us. It's hard not to become emotional. And it's hard not to, as an Indigenous person, see every orange shirt as a reminder of the trauma that we've experienced, is the residential schools that continue to infect and create legacies that impact our families. And then, of course, the fact that our communities are in tremendous poverty and in situations involving great violence. At the same time, it's also very hopeful on a day like this that when we do see our allies, our friends, our relatives who are wearing orange shirts on a day like this, it's also a very emotional day. You saw just a second ago a young girl who called out for the children. And it's hard not to get emotional about that because all of us are also parents or aunties or uncles or grandparents. And we see that within this generation, such incredible hope, Indigenous and non-Indigenous children coming together in remarkable, beautiful ways to try to create something different than what we have inherited as a country.
And Nigan, when you talk about the kids, you know, when we saw that spirit walk begin not that long ago from Parliament Hill to this point, and the children were at the front of the walk representing the kids who didn't come home, I suppose I guess it's just obvious that they also represent the path forward.
Yes, I mean, every child that went to residential school was impacted by the experience, and many of those children did not return home, and we are finding out about those stories in the unmarked graves that are at our residential schools across the country. We're now looking at thousands of unmarked graves all across the country that are even being talked about even today. In Brandon, there is an event today that talks about recognizing those children who were in those graves. And then at the same time, we see these children all across the country wearing orange shirts, committing to one another, not always getting along, even arguing, but agreeing to work together in places like schools, in homes, in communities all across this country. And as you can see in the pictures right in front of us, walking together, agreeing to walk together. You know, reconciliation is not about agreeing. And I think that's something that we often get confused about. Reconciliation is about agreeing to walk together. It's about saying, regardless of how much we disagree, how much we may have different experiences, different genders, sexualities, political opinions, it's about how do we walk together and try to compromise and work together and listen and learn and take action together. That's what you're seeing in those children, because oftentimes those children are unburdened by the politics and the media and the ways in which we as adults are rather staunch in our ways. And these children, they know what it means to get along, and they know what equity and justice looks like. They know what it takes to build a relationship and share space, share land.
Nigan, thank you. And you're right. You're seeing a combination of pictures here just on the right of the screen, just so people understand. Some are from the talk today. Some are from events that happened throughout yesterday. And as we go through this program today, in about 25 minutes time, when the official program begins, keep an eye on the bottom of your screen because some of those banners will help guide you through what's happening. This is a day to listen. We will be listening along with you as it happens, but just to help you along. And Nigan, of course, will be back with us throughout this day. This program, as we said, we're now looking at about 23 minutes away from now. So as we await the start, let's take a closer look at what is actually happening on the ground. CBC's Olivia Stefanovich is also here at LeBreton Flats among today's guests. I can almost see you where you are, Olivia. How are you?
Well, Adrian, I'm here at LeBreton Flats where hundreds of people are just starting to arrive, Adrian, to mark this second National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And you can see there's a sea of orange, the color that's come to represent the resilience of survivors. And just a short time ago, we saw people arrive from a spirit walk, from Parliament Hill, making the 1.4-kilometer journey to LeBreton Flats here in Ottawa in memory of all the children, the more than 150 Métis, First Nations and Inuit children who attended government-funded residential schools here in Canada. And just a short time ago as well, Adrian, we saw people carrying a red banner with the names of more than 4,000 students who went to these schools and never returned home. Now, I want to introduce you to a special guest. Her name is Jody Albany. She's an intergenerational survivor and a member of the Big Trout Lake First Nation in Northern Ontario. Jody, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi.
And I'd just like to start, Jody, if you can tell us what today represents for you.
For me, it represents healing. From my parents passing away. They were residential school survivors. They went to residential school. So today is a healing day for me.
And when we were chatting earlier before air, you said you have a special message to share with people. Can you share that message with us now?
Growing up, I always wondered why I couldn't have a relationship with my mother. I always wondered why, but it had to take death to realize that it was my mother that needed all the love and nurturing that all these residential school survivors need in their life, the ones that are still alive.
Powerful message. Thank you so much for joining us, Jody.
Thank you.
So it's just one powerful story, Adrian, from so many of the people gathered here. We are expecting thousands of people to be in this crowd to hear remarks from residential school survivors, the former commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Murray Sinclair, and as well as Mary Simon, the first Indigenous Governor General, Adrian.
Olivia, thank you very much, and thanks to Jody there as well. One more reminder that what you're looking at is so deeply personal and it's so deeply current. So often we talk about the story and the legacy and the horror of residential schools as if it's something deep in the past. It is not, and the hurt goes on. Of course, today's ceremony will also be watched by people in Canada's northern Indigenous communities. That's why it's really important that CBC's Juanita Taylor is in Whitehorse right now. So, Juanita, if you can hear me, a special unveiling will be taking place right where you are, I gather. Can you set the scene for us, please?
Hey, 2, 1, 2, hey.
Hi, Adrian. Yes, I'm at the Kwanlin Dun Cultural Center here in Whitehorse, where they are setting up. You might be able to hear some of the audio in the background, but where they are setting up for this unveiling of a street walk that is going to honor the residential school survivors and as well for the children who never made it home. That unveiling will happen in a little while, and there are events being planned throughout the day here in Whitehorse. And I'd like to bring into the conversation Chief Doris Bill. She's Chief of the Kwanlin Dun First Nation. Chief Bill, thank you so much for your time this morning. Can you just begin by telling us just how you're feeling and how you're thinking today, this being the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation?
Well, for me as a former survivor, it's a day of reflection. It's a day of memories. It's, I've been thinking a lot about my fellow former survivors from the Delta and across to the Eastern Arctic. I went to 2 residential schools. I went to Stringer Hall in Inuvik, and I also spent a year in Grolier Hall when Stringer shut down. So I'm just thinking back to a lot of that. And recently I found some really, someone from the Eastern Arctic sent me some pictures of myself when I was very, very young in Stringer Hall, which I didn't even know existed. There was about 3 of them, and they found it on the Anglican Church of Canada website, and I was amazed. I've been staring at them and just reflecting on my time there. Mm-hmm. So, and I made a lot of good friends, and yes. I still see some of them today. Yeah,
well, that's great. Chief Bill, as the Chief of the Kwanlin Dun First Nation, can you talk about some of the actions you're doing to sort of work with reconciliation today?
Well, probably the biggest thing that we've done is implement our own community safety officer program that we built from the ground up. We built with the help of the community. And this program has been amazing for our community. We work to decolonize our system. And, we've put in place measures that, we've looked at the infrastructure, we've improved lighting in our community, we've improved the infrastructure, we've worked with the community, we now have 6 safety officers in our community, we just added 2 more. And they are the eyes and ears of our community, and they work to cover that gap between the RCMP and the community. And as a result, we've seen crime come down. We've seen cost savings to bylaw, to RCMP. The calls to service are down. So, for us, it's been a tremendously rewarding experience because it tackles those really difficult issues and a lot of them came from residential school, that the substance use, we drink to forget, lateral violence, all of those kinds of things. And we've seen as a result of that program, we've seen all of those not fully go away, but they're better. It's better than it used to be. Yeah.
Chief Bill, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and I wish you a very comforting day as you reflect on your past experiences and as well as your friends on this National Truth and Reconciliation Day.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah.
All right, back to you, Adrian.
Juanita Taylor in Whitehorse, thank you, Juanita, and thanks to Chief Bill as well. I was just writing down some of the words that you were saying there about this being a comforting day, and the Chief talking about, you know, elements of a better path. These are all important things to hear. The CBC's Cam McIntosh is in Winnipeg, where he too is at a survivor's walk. So Cam, I think if we can, there we are. So now that we can see you, we can see people also walking behind you. As you walk by them and talk, what are you hearing from people there?
Well, feeling a lot of energy here. This is a very large walk through downtown Winnipeg. We're just at Portage in Main. This crowd has been going by for several minutes, and we can't see the end of it around the corner. It's going to go for several more minutes. This started off with several hundred people at the Forks in downtown Winnipeg. Now that number's up into the thousands, quite likely. It's hard to keep kind of a count because it's such a big crowd. Warren Campbell is with me right now. He's here with his 2 daughters. He came out today. Why was it important for you to be out here today?
Well, my mom was a residential school survivor from Pine Creek. She attended Pine Creek residential school for 13 years. And just to be here out, just to honor my mom and with her granddaughters, to be here out here and just for all the survivors and everything, yeah.
So we're seeing a lot of people from different walks of life here. What do you hope people take away from this?
Well, just for healing, you know, and the truth and reconciliation, just to basically heal and to honor all the children that hadn't, you know, they didn't come home, like stuff like that, and for my mom and all the survivors.
What does this do for your own healing?
Well, yeah, it helps my daughter in that because my mom passed about 7 years ago, so you know it's helped to heal them as well and to honor her as well.
So, Warren, thank you very much for taking time with us.
Okay, have a good day.
Really appreciate it. Yeah. So Adrian, that's Warren Campbell and his 2 daughters. They're among the many, many people here walking down Portage Avenue here in Winnipeg. This is one of several events in the city here today. Orange Shirt Day was a very big event last year, and it looks like it may be becoming an even bigger event here this year. The provincial government has a standing promise to make this a full statutory holiday in the future. This crowd is going to walk to the RBC Convention Center several blocks down Portage Avenue, and just around the corner from here, there's going to be a large powwow to basically mark the day, not just as a day of remembrance, but also as a day of hope and hope for reconciliation. The organizers here really wanted to achieve an event where people could come and share in a moment of reconciliation and to make that accessible to people. And that's what we're seeing right here in downtown Winnipeg.
Cam, that's fantastic. Thank you. And I completely understand what you're saying about the energy. I can see it in your walk. I can see it in their smiles and in the conversations you're having. And here, too, back at Le Breton Flats, we also, if you can, you know, here in the microphones behind us, there are groups of people here who are, you know, laughing and talking and building, too. So hang in there, Cam. We'll be back to you throughout the day, all right? You are also looking at live pictures, again, from Le Breton Flats, and something important has started happening in the last few minutes as people are gathering. They are starting to lay the little shoes, the little kids' shoes on the stage. That is going to happen throughout this afternoon as we head into this program. You'll see pictures of that on this pool feed provided to you by the Aboriginal People's Television Network soon and throughout the morning as you see them. Just be aware that those, of course, represent the shoes of the little ones who just didn't come home. And as we look at that, Nigan Sinclair is with us again. So, Nigan, you're also in Winnipeg. We saw what Cam was seeing in the walk. I know we heard some of the stories. I'm wondering, Nigan, is there a moment for this day that you are waiting for the most? Is there something that you're most looking forward to seeing?
It actually already happened. This morning, at 6 a.m., a few hundred of us got together to do a sunrise ceremony. And I was laughing when Cam was doing his broadcast there on Portage Avenue because over several dozen of people that I saw in the background were people that I was in ceremony with just about a few hours ago as we greeted the sun and we took care of one another. But the message is right. The message is right that this is not a day just to talk about trauma and violence. It's also to talk about what we are as Indigenous peoples and how Canadians are in relationship with us. And those shoes are to recognize those children who perished and were lost in those schools. Over thousands of children that we are now learning about, that Indigenous communities knew had gone, never came home, and had asked questions about for decades upon decades, asking Canada and Canadians, what happened to our children? Where did they go? And we now have answers in those unmarked graves across the country. But it is also about people offering gifts of laughter and of songs and of possibility. It's about people walking through a downtown city and saying, this is what reconciliation looks like. It's when all of us commit to one another and think, what can we do now? What is it how can we vote different? How can we create our workplaces different? How can we create our public spaces different? And so you will see today images that you might not always see in a day of mourning, but you'll see moments of laughter and of song and of dance. And it's because Indigenous peoples, we are so resilient. We are so used to how you reconcile yourself with a history that's very complicated, but then also how do you turn towards the future? It's in those dance, it's in those songs, and it's in that moment of beauty in an orange shirt in which we see two aunties offering shoes of a absolutely atrocious moment in our history, all of our history, Canadians and Indigenous peoples, where children perished in state paid for schools run by churches. But then it's also about realizing that we can do something about this. We can honor their memory, we can honor what happened, and then move together in a way to build a country different.
Excellent. That's an excellent characterization, because as I hear you speak, it reminds me that as this day is evolving, the relationships are evolving, and I think that's an interesting way to look at this day. I should tell you, Nigan, and for the folks at home, that what you're hearing behind is not the official start of the program yet. This is sort of getting the crowd warmed up. These are some early conversations happening. When it does begin, it is scheduled to begin in about 7 minutes' time. We will, of course, stay silent because this day is about listening, and we all want to hear it with you. So we will be back to you again, possibly right after the program, Nigan. But for now, I'd like to bring in one more person. This is Kayla Little Poplar. The first ever official Indigenous youth leader at what's called BGC Canada. That's formerly known as the Boys and Girls Club. So Kayla is from Sweetgrass First Nation in Saskatchewan, but you're joining us from Toronto. So nice, really nice to see you, Kayla. And I'm wondering, what's going through your head and heart on this day?
It's a very complex day for many Indigenous people, including myself, but I think on this day the most important thing to remember is the goal for reconciliation, which is the restoration of friendly relations, and everyone wants to achieve that goal by working together. So I think that focusing on the action part in reconciliation is quite important for today, and for people to take the time to really learn and reflect about what has happened in the past and what we can do to work together and move forward.
So Kayla, you're in high school, and I wonder, when you talk with your friends about this day, what's your sense of the degree to which it resonates with them?
I do talk with my friends about this, like topics like these quite a bit, and I feel like we all have quite an understanding about what's happened. My friends are Indigenous and non-Indigenous alike, and we both take the time to really think about what we can do on this day to help each other and help with our part of reconciliation.
So can we talk about that for a second? When you say what we can do on this day, I think there might be lots of people at home wondering what they can do, either Indigenous or non-Indigenous, what would you suggest?
So there's so many things that we can do on today, and while it's called Orange Shirt Day, I think the most important thing to have on today, it would be an open mind. So for non-Indigenous people, that could be a number of things. It could be looking up articles about what's happened, but I think one very important thing to do is to listen to the voices of Indigenous people within your community. Go around your community, actively seek out events, seek out people, listen to their stories, and actively listen to what we have to say and what we believe should be happening to move forward. And today is very, very complex for many people. And for non-Indigenous people, it can be a day that is painful or sorrowful. And I think for Indigenous people, we should just take that extra time to really care for ourselves and make sure that we're doing all right on today.
This is wise. This is wise. Kayla, thank you very much for spending time with us. I look forward to talking with you again, okay?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here.
All right. Let's check back in now with Olivia Stefanovic, who is here at Le Breton Flats, standing by, I gather, with some guests. Olivia.
Well, Adrian, I'm joined by 3 special guests. They made the 2.5-hour drive from Tyendinaga to Ottawa today. Thank you so much for your time. Can you tell us what today means for you?
This day has meant so much to me, even knowing that it's the second National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. The history that is behind this day has affected me and my entire family and my friends' lives. And just knowing that people are now listening and seeing what our stories are and hearing and understanding what's happening really means a lot to me and my entire family. I just want to be able to get the message that every single child matters, and I want everyone in Canada to be able to hear that.
Thank you so much. What are you thinking about today?
I think it's really great that our community is finally able to come together and that we are actually allowed to come and heal. And this day is just like a day for healing and remembering and honoring the children who suffered in residential school.
And what about for you?
We get to honor the children and the survivors of the residential schools and the families and communities involved.
Thank you so much for your time. So Adrian, this is a day for honoring survivors and remembering all those children who never made it home.
Absolutely. Thank you, Olivia. It is all about the kids. You know, the kids who didn't come home and the kids who are the future. We're just really a few minutes away from the start of today's program. Just to give you a sense, you can see in those pictures there that the seats are filling up. So if you imagine the pictures you've seen, the little shoes on the stage, the first row of those seats there are largely occupied with survivors. Again, this is about them. This is about that experience. But there are also Indigenous leaders there. Certainly the Governor General, Mary Simon, and her husband, Whit Fraser, are also there. We are probably about 3 minutes away now from it beginning, and it has that feel that it's about to start. So I want to take this opportunity one more time to check in with Nigan, because Nigan St. Clair, over the course of the next hour, as we are all sitting and listening, can you help me give us a sense of what it is that you will be looking for specifically in the ceremony that maybe we should all be watching for?
So there's going to be a bunch of things spoken about at this ceremony. Many things we've either heard before. Some things are new. The Prime Minister this morning, for example, was referring to the papal apology, which happened just a few months ago. It feels like it happened just yesterday, but it was a number of months ago in which the Pope traveled across the country and apologized to survivors. What I'm interested in looking at is what will people specifically mention calls to action which continue to not be addressed or be half addressed in different ways. I'm really interested for some tangible things that people may mention in speeches. I mean, we're going to see a speech from Governor General Mary Simon, and if there's anything that we've been witnessing about the Governor General, she takes every opportunity to speak to the nation very seriously. I think back to when Mary Simon turned to the Pope, who came to the country, and she basically told him that he has to earn a relationship with residential school survivors. They don't just simply like him because he's the Pope. That's a very anti thing to do. That's a very Indigenous anti thing to do. It's also something that I think we expect of our leaders when they enter into leadership positions as Indigenous peoples. And so I'm interested to see whether people talk a little bit about the calls to action, which we know that all governments at all levels have been very slow. I think there's also a very interesting conversation around the issue of the statutory holiday, because we know that there's been only one province that has recognized it, Prince Edward Island. All the other provinces have either slowed down or are just generally acting as though the day is not a holiday, even though the federal government has called it one. And then I'm lastly looking at the ways in which, what are the images and the representations of survivors? Beyond just the shoes, are there gifts that are offered? Are there ways in which survivors have been recognized? A lot of survivors like to be called thrivers, and I'd be watching for that. I'm also interested in the role of children in this ceremony. What will be the role, what will be the way the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation, which has really, this is their first national event today. They've been in operation for a number of years at the University of Manitoba campus, but they haven't done a national event because most of their events were pandemic related. They did do a national video, but this is their first national event. How will it go on? How will it carry on? Will it be successful? Will it be well received? Those are all the things that I'm looking for.
Oh, wow, there's a lot there, Nigan. There's an awful lot there. Okay, we have so much to talk about once this is over, but I'm going to pull back now. We're going to stop and listen. This is a production that is brought to you.
Welcome. My name is Madeline Alakarelak. Ndio aweti ashkenonia yes wendat indi yanyonia iwahit yokutin Charles Bender yatsi. Bonjour, je m'appelle Charles Bender.
Good day, my name is Charles Bender.
Live from the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. This is Remembering the Children, a national day for truth and reconciliation.
En direct du territoire non cédé de la nation algonquine Anishinaabe, voici ce souvenir des enfants, journée nationale de la vérité et de la réconciliation. Ce territoire inclut la capitale du Canada, alors il est tout à fait approprié.
Therefore, it is quite appropriate that we meet here today to mark this the second ever Orange Shirt Day.
A territory that includes Canada's capital city. It's fitting we gather here to mark the second ever National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, otherwise known as Orange Shirt Day.
Set at Ottawa's Le Breton Flats Park, this commemorative gathering honors those who never made it home.
Honore ceux qui ne sont jamais rentrés des pensionnats autochtones, ceux qui les ont survécus et les familles qui ont été changées à jamais par ces institutions.
Asugu ima luto alupuigok tisi kasuak si mamatano nakakasi mayunit tining. Taman na ulumi nalunak tawok sa pililaong itunit tining. Institutions which did everything they could to make us forget who we are as Indigenous peoples, they did so by targeting the most vulnerable among us, kitongavut, our children.
That's why, over the next hour, together with our broadcast partner, APTN, we'll share a series of tributes to those taken from us far too soon.
Tema how you mayuin na gata ipinalaki lang amman atuk si magatigo taku si magatigo how you magatigo no nakakasi mayutsuta huvia na hatta lang agaluak suni ani na hatta lang miman. We know that today may call forth many emotions, some joyful and some very painful.
La ligne de crise nationale des
The National Crisis Line for the residential schools 1-866 and 925-4419.
925-4419 est un numéro que nous partageons.
Is a phone number that we'll be sharing throughout the show. Assistance is just a phone call away.
As we so often do, we begin with ceremony. As members of our opening procession arrive to bear witness, so too a very special object, a traditional red cedar bentwood box.
Handcrafted for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission by Coast Salish artist Luke Marston, this box was at all TRC events, including the delivery of its final report. And Luke, the artist, is here with us today, helping to carry the box he created to receive and preserve the deeply personal items, each signifying healing and hope.
Taimatsiak mamisallu ta pihatta lang agata tat sumasa nang wataw si Mayub kinakaukpok tako isumagit-sugit no nakakasi mayunivut inyunivut allangayuillo tako ilisat. Its faces reflect the distinct cultures of former First Nations, Inuit, and Métis students. Faces we'll see and hear echoed over the course of this program today.
Good afternoon. To the survivors, to the children who did not make it home, to the families, to the relatives, and to everyone who is here. My granddaughter is standing here with me because she's a survivor. We thank her grandparents for surviving to ensure that she and all our grandchildren from coast to coast to coast would be here today. We are honored that you are here. And on behalf of the Algonquin Nation, we say Chimigwedj Nichkiwedog Shishanishnabeg, Chimigwedj Kibijayegoma, Nongoma Nishnabeaki. We come together with that one heart, one spirit, one voice. Let us lift our heart and our spirit. Let us together say to the one who put us here, to the one that made all. And we say, Migwedj Kishiminado, Migwedj Kinakego, Chimigwedj. We thank the Creator for his many blessings, as we thank our ancestors, to ensure that the beauty of our grandfather, the eagles, continue to stand with us. We thank our grandmother, the moon, and our grandfather, the sun, and our mother, the earth, to ensure that the beautiful voices of our singers with the drum continue to sing those songs of our ancestors. That is our prayer here today. Let us feel that in our hearts. Let us feel that in our spirit. Let us honor. Let us remember. Let us love one another. For indeed the Creator loves us. Migwedj Gishiminado, Migwedj Kinakego, Migwedj Onje, Kizagi Eduin. We thank you, Creator, for the beauty of life, as we thank you for all of love that you've given us. Chimigwedj, thank you for being here. I love you. Migwedj Kizagi in. Migwedj. Wait.
Chimigwedj, merci à l'aîné Algonquin.
Thank you to the Algonquin Anishinaabe Elder Commander from the First Nation, Kitibanzigi Anishinaabe, who welcomed us today and blessed us. We also appreciate the Eagle River Singers, Algonquin artists from Kitibanzigi and Barrier Lake. Our next guest becomes synonymous with the cause of Reconciliation Canada.
Ipinallaki qawok, ipigiyitsaki qawgibisiuk, teematigialuk, surlu, ummatiup tuldetaktalungatitut, ipinakpaman. Taana tungasutisimigatigu, ukayuillu, ingituillu pivalangamata ullumi. With lifetime accomplishments too numerous to list, the Honorable Murray St. Clair was a legal trailblazer for decades before he eventually became Chief Commissioner of the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And although the TRC issued its final report nearly 7 years ago, sulipiyat salungit pibiyuk takwa pihuyibunga sakitawlok tilugit takununga at sukulok tunun. Much work remains to ensure its 94 calls to action are fully recognized and implemented.
Work His Honor has now begun as Special Advisor and Elder in Residence with the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation and the University of Manitoba.
Tunga sutitsiyalu gata tunga suktitauli atatautsuni uigiyautsuni tanalo atatsiegiyautsuni tallimani angutaling. Please welcome, as we're a very welcoming people. He's a father, he's a husband, and Musham to 5 grandchildren.
Mizana Gijik, the one who speaks of pictures in the sky, His Honor, Murray Sinclair.
Bonjour, Kanasituk, Mizana Gijik, and Dizinakas, Ego Dodem. Hello, everybody. Your Excellency, Governor General Simon, Your Honor, Prime Minister, and all of the elders who are here, and all of the survivors, and the children and grandchildren of survivors who are here. I bring you greetings, and thank you for allowing me to speak to you for a few minutes. I want to say that today we have an opportunity to begin to do what we can in this next coming year to cement the relationship that we have so willingly undertaken to improve the relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. But the most important acknowledgement that we can all make today is for the survivors and their children who are here with us, and those who are watching from afar. Without the advocacy and the contributions of survivors, September 30th would be just another day in the calendar. It is only because of the strength and the courage of survivors that we had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We now have a national center, and today we mark a national day for this important work. I want to thank the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation for the invitation to be with you today. The team at the NCTR, led by Stephanie Scott, is doing important work not only during Truth and Reconciliation Week, but all year long on behalf of all survivors. Survivors lead us to this moment as in the journey of reconciliation when they were on their personal journeys of healing, and as they continue to seek justice for what took place at the hands of the government, the church, and other actors. I remain grateful for their steadfast commitment to uncovering and giving light to the truth. When the Commission envisioned a National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, we had hoped for it to be a day of intention, reflection, and discussion, for Canadians to take a day out of their lives, to lend their ears and their hearts to survivors, to listen to them, and to resolve to do better in the next 364 days that follow until the next National Day. Because this important work of reconciliation is not a one-day affair. As we say, it will take us several generations, as it took us several generations to create this situation that we now face. So my message to Canadians is this: today and every day, watch and listen to the stories of survivors, their families, and their communities. We must all recognize that the Indian residential school system is not just something for your history books. It is something that Indigenous peoples are still feeling the effects of each and every day. And in many ways, non-Indigenous people in this country also feel the effects of what has been part of the history of this nation and that it's had upon their lives as well. We in the Indigenous community are in a constant state of grieving, it seems sometimes, for the families that were broken, for the cultures that were torn apart, and for the children that never made it home. For non-Indigenous Canadians, I hope that this day, September 30th, will hold an important place in your hearts, for you must understand that the way that you have been raised and educated has also had an impact upon you and your sense of who you are and your sense of who we are. This is not a radical concept to pause and to reflect. You do so for other days and occurrences throughout your life quite routinely. On November 11th, for example, you wear your poppy and you honor the veterans for Remembrance Day. You pause and reflect on the history of your country, as complicated as it can be. On September 30th, I am simply asking that you do the same. Just as we acknowledge the legacy of Her Majesty, the late Queen Elizabeth II, as complicated as it can be, many governments in Canada were quick to acknowledge and observe a holiday on short notice, but unfortunately are still not embracing the meaning of today. On September 30th, I am simply asking you to extend the same courtesy to survivors that you are used to doing for others. Yes, our country's history is complicated, and it is not always easy to review. But you don't make it better by ignoring it or glossing over it. You make it better by helping carry out the calls to action, by learning, by unlearning, and by resolving to do better. Because this story is not over. Records, for example, are still being turned over by the church authorities. Burial sites are still being discovered. And so many survivors and their families are still seeking closure for what happened to their siblings, cousins, and children. On September 30th and beyond, We must resolve to stand with them, to have their backs. Don't leave them to do this work alone. We need your help. We need your understanding, and we need you to ensure that this is forever made a part of Canada's national memory. Miigwech.
Chimigwech, Tiawankina, nos remerciements à l'honorable Murray Sinclair.
We thank the Honorable Murray Sinclair.
Ino katikai ingitut pilangami mata ukausri katakpaka. Tana ingisimiyok Montreal miuguliksuni ino kativut. Our next performer is a Montreal-based singer-songwriter. Ala amaksuni inut sakami. Born and raised in a region close to my heart. Anansia kukanuna vimiusayaw ni mimata. Beatrice Deer's song, Mother, speaks to the heartbreak so many women suffered when their babies were stolen to the schools.
Lorsque je referme les yeux, lorsque les cris en moi résonnent, lorsqu'ils deviennent sauvages, ces routes il a douté. Tu es mon feu, ma source de lumière. Je porte en moi ce rêve millénaire, cet héritage où mille échos de rire. Au-delà de mes eaux troubles, à travers ton regard, j'ai vu tes eaux cassées. Et ta force de continuer. Tu es mon feu, ma source de lumière. Je porte en moi ce rêve millénaire, cet héritage où mille échos de rire, cet héritage où mille échos de rire, de rire.
Ipinalaki kataktok nakukmik Beatrice. Thank you, amak tapingalo.
Originaire de la Première Nation Abitibi-Winnie,
From the Abitibi-Winnie First Nation that is now known as Quebec, Richard Kabatish is a facilitator, an organizer, and a community leader.
Aujourd'hui, c'est une confirmation de ce que
Today
l'héritage des pensionnats a fait.
confirms what
Ça a pris le sacrifice
residential
des enfants
schools
pour arriver
did
à reconnaître
on our
la vérité de ce qui
lands.
s'est passé dans ces institutions.
It took time for communities to see the reality of what happened
Tellement grave chez nous.
in those residential schools. We knew that dire things were happening, and we knew as well that some of our stories were not believed. They weren't believed by institutions, they weren't believed by our parents.
Retrouver les preuves de ce que nous disions.
We needed to see the lives that were sacrificed by children to see and to believe what was said then. We were not seen, we were not listened to. But today, this knowledge brings back what we lived in those residential schools. Let's not forget that it was the children that found a way to tell us the truth, but they sacrificed their lives in so doing. It is imperative that we remember this aspect of our story, of our language, of our culture that has a bearing on the way we are today. We have hurts and what we lived make of us people that have their soul burnt. And we have to remember all these events the way we are doing these events today for us to look to the future. I thank you very much for your attention to my little presentation.
Je vous rappelle que des événements se déroulent partout au pays
I
pour
would
la
like
10e journée
to
nationale.
remind you that there are events held everywhere throughout the country on this National Day for Truth and Reconciliation.
Avec un bon nombre de ces activités
It is important
sur les
to see that many of these activities are centered around children and youth.
Ça comprend le rassemblement de ce
It
matin sur la
includes
colline parlementaire,
the meeting this morning
le chant
on the Parliamentary Hill, followed by a spiritual walk while singing that ended here at the Albertan Flats Park.
You take good care of yourselves.
Inu khatikai khau yimavut angayok kharayaw lauktun khitongayktun aksak tawyun pigialak kivuli law rivuli namunga mangata namunga taw ng mangata namu aksak taw ng mangata. Perhaps the only pain worse than losing a child, Charles, is not knowing what happened to them.
un destin beaucoup trop fréquent dans les pensionnats du Canada. C'est pourquoi le
A
Centre
destiny
national pour
way
la
too
vérité
frequent
et la réconciliation
in residential
et son
schools.
registre
This is
commémoratif
why
national des
the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation
Center
created
Executive
the
Director,
National Registry.
Stephanie Scott.
Bonjour. Good afternoon. Miskwa Nakwada Kwe Indigenous Wabashishi Dodem. I'm from Treaty 1, and I say miigwech for welcoming us to the unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. I would like to acknowledge all the survivors that are here today, the elders, knowledge keepers, leaders, and all my relations. I am the daughter of a residential school survivor, and I am a 60 scoop survivor. I am the next generation who was taken away from me at birth. It has taken me decades to find my way home, to understand who I am and where I've come from. And for that reason, I think about the length of time it will take to repair the damage of residential schools. The National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation was born from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. The Centre is a steward for the survivors' statements shared with the TRC and the millions of records and sacred items gathered during its mandate. Today, we mark the second National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. This is a moment for the country to pause, reflect, and remember the thousands of children that were lost to residential school. We honor those survivors that are still with us today. This day is an opportunity for all Canadians to learn about the treatment of Indigenous peoples in the residential school system and other colonial institutions like day and boarding schools and Indian hospitals and the lasting harm that was done. It is more important than ever that we lend our support to survivors. We must ensure that their truths are honored and respected and shared. And we must recognize that all we have a part in this healing this harms. For too long, the truth was hidden and denied. Children were pressured not to tell their stories or report horrific abuse. Neglect and suffering were ignored. Efforts to acknowledge the history, such as Canada's official apology and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, only happened because of the tireless work of survivors themselves. We must share and teach the truth. Truth is a fundamental basis of reconciliation. Without acknowledgement of the truth, it is impossible for survivors to heal and for communities to rebuild. I am grateful for all those who have taken the time to mark today. Indigenous peoples cannot walk alone. Each person in Canada must play a part, and we must call for accountability from governments and institutions. We cannot forget the thousands of children that died or went missing in residential school. What you will witness now are the 4,100 names of children who did not return home to their parents and loved ones. Every day, our ongoing research finds more and more children who died. To commemorate the children on that list, a 50-meter-long memorial cloth has been created. As it makes its way onto the stage, I ask the Eagle River Singers to sing an honor song. Then, a ceremonial offering of children's footwear, like those which followed last year's horrific news of 215 unmarked graves near the Kamloops Residential School in BC, shoes that will be distributed to local Indigenous organizations. Miigwech for you all being here today.
Oeg. Ipinalaritong. Nakong mi Stephanie, thank you Stephanie. Takwalu sikla tu viniapit. Takwalu isu magibabut uting isak tu viniapit. Takwalu tamang mik ikayok si makhawyut atiaping itay matakun nakawabut. Nakong mi Stephanie and the survivors, thank you. And those who were part of the procession.
Notre prochain invité est un survivant qui a...
Our next guest is a survivor who found his voice lost for too much thanks to
Un
poetry.
guerrier des mots.
A warrior of words that lives now on the Coldwater Reserve in British Columbia. Dennis Saddleman was formerly a student in a residential school in Kamloops.
C'est un site qu'il revisite de
He
façon
revisits the site through his poem, Monster.
I was a small child. Yes, I was a small child. I went to residential school when I was 6 years old. My mom and dad took me to the residential school in Kamloops, BC. We were standing in front of the red brick building. To me, the building looked huge. It looked like a monster. It scared me. It had lots of window eyes, and it had red brick flesh. This poem is called Monster, a residential school experience. I hate you, residential school. I hate you. You're a monster, a huge, hungry monster built with steel bones, built with cement flesh. You're a monster built to devour innocent native children. You're a cold-hearted monster, cold as the cement floors. You have no love, no gentle atmosphere. Your ugly face grooved with red bricks. Your monster eyes glare from grimy windows. Monster eyes so evil. Monster eyes watching terrified children cover with shame. I hate you, residential school. I hate you. You're a slimy monster, oozing in the shadows of my past. Go away, leave me alone. You're following me wherever I go. You're in my dreams, in my memories. Go away, monster, go away. I hate you. You're following me. I hate your residential school. I hate you. You're a monster with huge, watery mouth of double doors. Your white mouth took me. Your yellow-stained teeth chewed the Indian out of me. Your teeth crunched my language, grinded my rituals and my traditions. Your taste buds became bitter when you tasted my red skin. You swallowed me with disgust. Your face wrinkled when you tasted my strong pride. I hate your residential school. I hate you. You're a monster. Your throat muscles forced me down to your stomach. Your throat muscles squeezed my happiness, squeezed my dreams, squeezed my native voice. Your throat became clogged with my sacred spirit. You coughed and you choked, for you cannot withstand my spiritual songs and dances. I hate your residential school. I hate you. You're a monster. Your stomach upset every time I wet my bed. Your stomach rumbled with anger every time I fell asleep in church. Your stomach growled at me every time I broke the school rules. Your stomach was full. You burped. You felt satisfied. You rubbed your belly and you didn't care. You didn't care how you ate up my native culture. You didn't care if you're Missy, if you're Piggy. You didn't care as long as you ate up my Indianness. I hate your residential school. I hate you. You're a monster. Your veins clotted with cruelty and torture. Your blood poisoned with loneliness and despair. Your heart, it was cold. It pumped fear into me. I hate your residential school. I hate you. You're a monster. Your intestines turned me into foul entrails. Your annals squeezed me, squeezed my confidence, squeezed my self-respect. Your annals squeezed, then you dumped me without parental skills, without life skills, dumped me without any form of character, without individual talents, without a hope for success. I hate your residential school. I hate you. You're a monster. You dumped me in the toilet, then you flushed out my good nature, my personalities. I hate your residential school. I hate you. You're a monster I hate you. 33 years later, I rode my Chevy pony to Kamloops. From the highway, I saw the monster. My God, the monster is still alive. I hesitated and I wanted to drive on, but something told me to stop. I parked in front of the residential school, in front of the monster. The monster saw me and it stared at me. The monster saw me and I stared back. We both never said anything for a long, long time. Finally, with a lump in my throat, I said, "Monster, I forgive you." The monster broke into tears. The monster cried and cried. His huge shoulders shook. He motioned for me to come forward. He asked me to sit on his lap. He stares. I spoke. "You know, I didn't like my government father and I didn't like my Catholic Church mother. I'm glad the Native people adopted me. They took me as one of their own. They fixed me up, repaired my mouth at double doors, washed my window eyes with cedar and fir bough. They cleansed me with sage and sweetgrass. Now my good spirit lives. The Native people let me stay on their land. They could have burnt me, you know. Instead, they let me live so the people could come here to school and learn about their culture." The monster said, "I'm glad the Native people gave me another chance. I'm glad, Dennis, you gave me another chance." The monster smiled. I stood up. I told the monster I must go. Ahead of me is my life. My people are waiting for me. I was at the door of my Chevy pony and the monster spoke. "Hey, you forgot something." I turned around and I saw a ghost child running down the cement steps. It ran towards me and it entered my body. I looked over to the monster and I was surprised. I wasn't looking at the monster anymore. I was looking at an old school. In my heart, I thought, this is where I earned my diploma of survival. I was looking at an old residential school who became my elder of my memories. I was looking at a tall building with 4 stories. Stories of hope, stories of dreams, stories of renewal, and stories of tomorrow.
Wow. Wow. Nakokmita po. Dan kaya ko si Miyavut inulilak ti mayok 1947 gutilugo kayang sualup jua mitawan ninyo na vimmi. Born in 1947 in the small village of Kayang Sualup jua Nunavik, Her Excellency Governor General Mary Simon and her siblings went to an English-only federal day school in Kudjuak. Takwa ilisa katingilyo tatsuma Mariup anitakdawalaw tud inyutitu hausang minik atuliraming. From grades 1 through 6, Mary Simon and her classmates would be punished anytime they spoke Inuktitut, the ancestral language of her Inuk mother. At so kung natuku si Mayok kisi ani ilisaw tiyalu si manirak miyanga tamani at jigi titaw sungin nivut kanatami nalunakani. It was a difficult period. One, she says, taught her things were not always equal here in Canada. Homeschooled from then on, it wasn't easy. But looking back, Mary says it's probably the best thing that's happened to me. Tunga Sutisiyavutana, here now with her message of remembrance and reconciliation. We invite Her Excellency, the Right Honorable Mary Simon, Governor General of Canada, Ukasimiyok, to speak.
Good afternoon. Unusakut nakongmik tamani khatawata inyo hatigitsuta. Bonjour. Elders, survivors, Prime Minister, and everyone else here, my colleagues and my friends and fellow Inuit. Tamani gatsi huyan na milkunga ilun na sinik, ammalo Inuit, Inutuinait, at sukuk simamata, Inu siminik, kajusititsisutik, taman natsukuk simaguti galwak sugu ullumiulaktok, Inutuinaw ni tinik, at utsiyangin na tugut, taman na huyan na merotiga, nakukmerotiga. First, I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Thank you for joining us on this National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Thank you for walking the path of reconciliation, of healing, of remembrance. Merci d'être avec nous aujourd'hui.
Thank you for being with us here today.
Today is about Indigenous peoples. It's about our true history. It's about the survivors. It's about the children who never came home. Nous ne pouvons pas
we could not deny the true history of Canada. We cannot accept the way we have treated Indigenous people. We cannot forget the children that were victims of residential schools.
Everyone watching across Canada, take a look at the shoes on this stage. Look at the bentwood box, a sacred item holding symbols of deep personal resonance for survivors. Look at the names on the memorial cloth, children across Canada who never got to see their homes again. This is what happens when policies mix with prejudice. Growing up in Nunavik, I witnessed most of my friends leaving for residential school. Because my mother was an Inuk and my father was a white man, I was left at home. And so I saw the impact on my community. I felt the void left by the children. It was devastating. It still is. Too many Indigenous communities suffer intergenerational trauma. To them I say, I see your pain. I believe your stories, and I believe in reconciliation as part of the healing journey. When unmarked graves of children were found at residential schools, Canadians opened their minds and hearts to the lived experiences, lived realities of Indigenous peoples. For many Canadians, it was the first time they were confronted by our true history. And since then, I've seen reconciliation in action across the country. I see it in all of you today who are here today with us. I see hope in all of you. Ayuinata is a word in my language. It means never give up. Commit yourself to action. Tamanna tukisimaw takatigit siya barlianibut kanata limami takunna takamana ilun na sinilu tema pinaswa ko mayunik takunna sunga sibunit satin nilu o kumaitu ni takunna kaluwak suta kayu siya ko manitsinik takunna tunga ayuin nata. Indigenous peoples still face many barriers, yet they constantly work to improve their communities, to create opportunities, to strengthen body, mind, and spirit. There is great joy in Indigenous languages, culture, and traditions. Canadians can learn so much by leading with understanding and respect, by reaching out and learning from each other, Indigenous and non-Indigenous alike. C'est avec la curiosité, la générosité.
It is with curiosity, with generosity, and with respect that we can learn from each other.
We are all responsible, each and every one of us. I encourage all of us to talk about reconciliation from coast to coast to coast, raise it with family and friends, have the hard discussions. This is difficult work, but necessary and rewarding. Ensemble, construisons un pays où nous pouvons
Together,
être
let's build a country where we could be who we are without judgment, without discrimination.
On this National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, let's raise our voice and take action today and every day. That is my hope for tomorrow. Thank you. Nakormik, merci, miigwech.
Nakormik, Governor General, Taima, Takwa, Nijausi Yaktut, Tunga Sutisimigattigu, and you could say there's a hint of bittersweetness to this afternoon. With so much talent and creativity on display from younger voices especially, it's hard not to think of what and who were taken from us.
Our people's future artists, leaders, elders, these were among the child casualties of this country's residential schools.
Taima ulumita kutitaw sivugut, hanutigi alupiyun nang ninginig tamakwa inusutun. Today we see what our children are capable of when given the chance. Takwa tusang ninikpat, the next duo, is a great example.
Recording their first album at just 9 years of age, here are Cree Métis brothers Luke and Aiden, aka also known as Double the Trouble, with their song Getting By.
Looking back at 7 years old, never thought I'd feel this pain. But everyone's been through it, I see. Guess we're all just the same. Hateful words stuck in my mind, won't let them go. Need someone to tell me why I'm so angry all the time. I'm getting through. Got my brother right behind me and my boys at suit say don't worry about it, it's down the road. Just gotta keep on pushing through. I've been traveling this land, seen things I've never seen. Lets me know there's more around. Won't move away from here. I'm getting by, getting through. Got my brother right behind me and my boys at two say don't worry about it, it's down the road. Just gotta keep on pushing through. Got my brother right behind me and my boys there to say, don't worry about us down the road, 'cause we'll be right there next to you. I'm getting by, getting through. Got my brother right behind me and my boys there to say, don't worry about us down the road, 'cause we'll be right there next to you.
Survivant cri du pensionnat
A
Ermiskin
Cree survival of the Ermiskin
Laurie McDonald s'efforce
residential school in Orima. Laurie McDonald tries today to educate others on what
à l'intérieur de ces
is a two-spirit life in these
But while his
walls.
two-spirit nature was accepted as special by family, what was seen as a gift at home had to be kept secret at school. Estranged from their parents, alienated from their people, thousands upon thousands of stolen children were forced to forget who they were and where they came from. Dagko aksataw si matsutik unga si takaksutik angayok kamin ning ilamin nilo no nakatimin nilo. Thousands and thousands ngin nito aksataw si mayunutakait. Puiga kuyaw hatta si malawk tu kinaw ng minik nakinga ng minilo.
En se rassemblant pour apprécier ce que nous avons aujourd'hui.
And by gathering to appreciate what we have today, we relight the fire in the eyes of our young ones, the fire that others tried to extinguish forever.
Kingulibami ukati si jabu unnusa ipigusutuk hanutigialok tamanna ipinamana.
Tanse, Nia, Nehi Awin, Akita Muskego sick. Okimau. What a beautiful day today. What a beautiful day. I am so grateful, Creator, grandfathers and grandmothers, for this beautiful day. All gifts. I am grateful today with my fellow survivors out there. Stand proud. Stand tall. Tapwe, Tapwe. Today I stand here today, not only as a survivor from the Erminskin Indian Residential School in Musqueam, but I stand here as a two-spirited person. Although my journey was difficult, being a survivor from a residential school, we suffered the same abuse, we suffered emotional abuse, we suffered neglect, and we suffered physical abuse and certainly sexual abuse. But what makes it unique, because I am unique, I am special. And being special is not of my making. It is the making of Manito. Manito gave me a path. And how we choose to go on this path is an individual journey. My journey wasn't easy, but I tell you now, No Kumpan showed me the way when I was a child, a memory of 5 years old. She said, your path, my child, is not going to be an easy one. But at 5 years old, she said, the Creator has given you a gift. You may not understand it, but you're going to hold on to the core. You're going to hold on to the root of it till you're amoshum. But I did not know what she meant. Sometimes, and again, it's your preference in life. And then we say preference, whether I walk in this path, being my preference as a male, being my preference as to having feminine intuitions. What are those tuitions? It's a gift, because I'm able to walk in both worlds and understand that there's a reason our two-spirited people existed long before the settlers came to this beautiful country. We had a role. We have to reclaim it. For those of my relatives out there, and they're right across Turtle Island, I say to you, my friends, I say to my friends and my survivors out there, I am 74 years old. It has taken me a lifetime to go back home. It's been 60 years since I went back home, since they took me away at 10. I had to go underground with that gift. But I'm here. I am here. As part of our healing journeys, and like all my survivor friends here, part of reconciliation is you must have people that will stand up and say, I am Nehiyaw, I am Indigenous, but I'm also a two-spirited person, and that is a gift, and I will continue, because that's part of my healing. Reconciliation cannot happen without that truth-telling. The church told us to put it under the carpet. In their hypocritical mind, that was a sin. To Nokum, to all our grandfathers and grandfathers, they said, your role is in that center pole. Go to Sundance, pick up that pipe, and give your gift of hai. Hai hai se manito. I say to you, Miigwech, hai hai. Thank you.
Kana tau ilinerak ti tau lok tuak kagunut nainun tau vani inuvimi. A survivor of 9 years of residential school in Nunavik, Navalik Tulugangnak and her classmates were forbidden from speaking Inuktitut.
Hello, Kona Ilaugavit, Meli, Prime Minister, my fellow Inuit, Haimata, Kona Inuit Ilaugamik, Kona Kaigafi, it kama yung ublumi, Tulugang Natkut, Ernia, Kinaktak Tamangman, Ipakani. Hello. My name is Navalik Helen Tulugangnak. I'm from Cambridge Bay, Nunavut. Today, I just lost a younger brother a couple of days ago. So I want to remember him and to give my love and respect to my brothers and sisters, Kane, Peggy, Ronnie, Jennifer Amok, my daughter Kim, my grandson Felix, and my granddaughter Alexis. I would like to first acknowledge the elders and knowledge keepers who guide us, the leaders joining us today, and the survivors whose truth we have gathered to honor on this National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. I am from Cambridge Bay, Nunavut, and I'm a proud Inuinnaq. I'm a survivor of residential school. I attended school in Inuvik for 9 years, living at Stringer Hall, the Anglican hostel. Residential school intended to assimilate us and destroy our culture, our language, and our way of life. At residential school, children were taught to hate their language and reject our identities, yet we are still here. We will survive. When I returned home, language became my focus. I managed to get most of my traditional language back, and I was able to get to know my family who had lost when I was taken. Learning Inuinnaqtut again gave me a chance to write and speak my language of the Qitaqmiut region, Inuinnaqtut, and gain more of a voice. Since 1995, I have written a weekly column about our culture and only in the NWT Nunavut White newspaper since 1995. I graduated at the age of 65. I couldn't have a graduation ceremony because of that darn COVID, so I graduated in my living room in front of a TV and my laptop. So go and get your language classes. No matter how old you are, you'll graduate, even if you're just sitting in your living room. Sharing culture and language is important as we reflect on reconciliation today. Today we honor residential school survivors and remember the children who did not come home. Inuqatit ka, iqaluptut tiami, haloko mayatkit. It kaumaniak pagit, tamafi, ilan noat kalo. At residential school, we went through so much loneliness, being away from family, parents, elders, and our community. Now it is all gone but the memories. And we must begin to heal now. Let us heal and live that good life that our ancestors wanted us to. We remember the past, but we also must move on. We must heal from it and live healthy, happy lives, just like our ancestors. Let us be free, happy, healthy, and to make the world a better place. Kwana.
We conclude this afternoon, much like we began, with ceremony. Joining us for this closing ceremony, the Inuksuk drum dancers of Nunavut, a group of high school students known for their innovative blend of the traditional and the contemporary.
Nakumig, everyone, thank you very much for not running away from the wasps. Nobody screamed. We're very cool like that. I'm very proud of you all.
And it was really a pleasure to share the stage with you, Madeline.
Likewise,
it really
Charles.
was wonderful. Nakuhmik.
Nakumito. Takko pidarigo tigisigatigo kikatulungit National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. Kut on behalf of the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, and of course APTN. Nakumig, thank you, Kwana, for being a part of today's proceedings.
Au nom du Centre national pour la vérité et la réconciliation.
On behalf of the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation and APTN, thank you for being part of today's proceedings. Thank you.
Once upon a time, there was an Inukshuk, not too far from here. It was standing over there on a hill, and it would disappear and then reappear again. You can hear something, and suddenly the Inukshuk starts talking to you. You pop up and look around, and the Inukshuk disappears again. The Inukshuk, in the shape of a person, is used for navigation. It signifies safety, hope, and friendship, and is a true symbol of courage and pride. We leave the Inukshuk where it is, on the land. Imakalitai matavani inuksulu alu ungatani ay gayak dudakutwaruni Tusagalakta mini mini uniketsyaga yamiu kumulisa tilunga amolia yamiu. Imakalitay matavani inuksulualu ungatani yay gayak tutakutwaruni tusagalakta mini mini uniketsyaga yamiu kumulisa tilunga amolia yamiu. Imakalitay matavani inuksulualu ungatani yay gayak tutakutwaruni tusagalakta mini mini uniketsyaga yamiu kumulisa tilunga amolia yamiu. Nunay nami sa tilunga nunay nami kayamiu.
And that was a commemorative program marking the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. What you just watched there was a ceremony that was produced by the Aboriginal People's Television Network as well as the Center for Truth and Reconciliation. Let's take a breath. There's a lot to talk about in what we all just saw, but while all of it's soaking in, we want to remind you to write something down here. The National Indian Residential School Crisis Line is available for support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you can call this toll-free number anytime. It's right up on your screen there. It's 1-866-925-4419. Because a lot of what people heard there right now, stirs a lot for them personally, and these are tough moments. So as you get that number, let's go, if we can, again to Nigan Sinclair, professor, acting head of the Department of Indigenous Studies at the University of Manitoba. We're so grateful for you to join us again from Winnipeg. So many important moments there in that program. That the one that really stands out personally for me as an observer was Dennis Saddleman performing his poem Monster. And I'm wondering, Nigan, what you can offer us about Dennis and about that poem.
So that poem was written during the time of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. One of the things that Dennis has often said as a survivor is that for a long time he sought his voice and searched to see how he could reconcile that experience of what many of us, he's certainly not alone in using residential schools as a metaphor for surviving a monster, because it wasn't just a monster that you lived with, but someone that followed you home, and then someone who lived with you in your home community and chased you, haunted you. The original version of that poem didn't include the second part, and I think that was a part that I was very looking forward to, because Dennis has published his poem since, and sort of been able to see the evolution of this piece of work. You know, at every single national event of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, there was poetry, there was song, there was a birthday party. There was a birthday party for survivors who never got to have a birthday celebration when they attended residential schools. I mean, that's how dehumanizing it was. People didn't even know when each other's birthdays was. They were called numbers and so on. And so this poem is really representing that experience. But the second part surrounding hope that Dennis was speaking about is probably, you know, a stage in which I think the country needed to hear that. They needed to hear the message that Dennis had to give. And I think that for every survivor, every Canadian, every person that has been impacted by residential schools, which is every single one of us in this country, Indigenous and Canadians, we face a reality of what do we do moving forward? What do we do to reconcile this experience that all of us have had, which has been some of the worst trauma in world history? And then how do we move forward? How do we share that land? How do we work together? And Dennis's message of hope at the end, I think, was talking about dreams. Dreaming is a good place to start.
It certainly is. Nigan, thank you for that. And, you know, as people were watching, what you couldn't feel unless you were here or sense were the sort of the waves of sage that was surrounding everyone here, and it was really lovely. Someone who certainly smelled it and felt it is our next guest, and it's Indigenous activist who's worked with organizations such as UNICEF, the Child Welfare League, to shed light on issues that obviously affect our community. We're in Ottawa. This is Kirsten Dumont, 19-year-old Algonquin First Nations Anishinaabe Kwe. So I'm so glad you were able to make it over here. And I know you brought your grandfather's box and you're hanging onto that eagle feather. What does this day feel like for you?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to correct something. I am 22.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know,
it's
some
totally
people like it
okay
when you get their ages wrong.
Yes,
That's not right. I'm sorry.
I think to me, what this day means is an understanding that we are moving towards the progression of reconciliation. When I was a child, we did not have commemorative events like these. We did not have educators going into schools, and we certainly did not have Indigenous youth voices being valued.
So that's a step.
Yes.
I know it's not a huge step, but you're right, it is a step. And I wonder, you spend a lot of time talking to students, and I know you were there not that long ago. You must get some interesting questions from them.
Yeah, so I was actually at a school this morning, and we did facilitate a discussion circle where students had the opportunity to reflect on what the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation means for them, how this day impacts them, and truly what the progression of reconciliation is supposed to look like within our society. And the things that I have heard from some youth are that we tolerate the intolerable. We tolerate slow-moving progression when after decades and years of genocide, we should be much more progressed than we are.
Yep.
I'm 22 years old and I have a sister who's 12, and a brother who's now 2. through them, I'm able to see the way that society as a whole is moving forward, but still that steadiness needs to fasten, and we need to start moving faster towards reconciliation and to a society filled with inclusion and equity.
Yeah, that acceleration you talked about has to happen.
Exactly.
Kirsten, thank you so much for spending time with us. I enjoyed spending the last few minutes with you and watching you watch and listen to. Appreciate that. Just to follow up on what Kirsten said, Nigan, you know, when we talk about the changes that need to happen and need to happen more quickly, sometimes people, you know, acknowledge this day as being representative of one call to action, but there are 94. So many of them haven't been tackled. How worried are you about the pace of getting to reconciliation?
National Chief Rosanna Archibald came out yesterday talking about how slow the movement has been for a number of reasons. One of the biggest reasons has been the relationship between Indigenous peoples, the federal government, and the provincial governments. Most of the calls to action of the TRC are under the purview and jurisdiction of provincial governments, but we are, as Indigenous peoples, particularly First Nations, have direct relationships with the federal government via the treaties. And so it becomes a very complicated factor when you bring in child welfare and education and justice and health and so on. Those are provincial things. And so we are moving very slow. We actually heard Justice Sinclair talk about that, about how the movement is slow to return documents. I was very interested to see that being talked about on that kind of stage. I mean, we had the entire nation's eyes looking at an event, and it also became very political. I mean, even political to the point where the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation started gesturing to other events, because there are sections of the country in which movement has been very slow, particularly in areas like Ontario, Quebec, Alberta. These are areas in which reconciliation is being very, very hard and very slow moving, in large part due to very resistant governments, leaders, individuals in the private and the public sector who are just not interested in and not engaged on the issue, not as educated on the issue. And so some of that frustration that you heard spoken about just a minute by Kirsten, that's very evident amongst many young Indigenous peoples. And you're seeing that for many of us who have been at this thing for a very long period of time, a bit longer than Kirsten. We know that change happens through those relational ties, but I also absolutely empathize with the younger generation's position in which we need change to happen much sooner. And so I hope this country listens to a voice like Kirsten to hear that change, if not listening to young Indigenous peoples, will lose that generation as it has lost so many before in the faith, in the interest and the commitment to areas of reconciliation all across the board. I also think you'll see young people create all new institutions, because simply most of Canada's institutions are woefully incapable of being anything other than some very big racist vestiges of the past.
Nigan, to hear you talk about generations means a lot, because while you were talking, we were joined here on set by your dad. By the great Justice Sinclair, and I'm so glad, Justice Sinclair, that you are with us here. I watched you, sir, during that ceremony. It was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard, and I wonder what feeling you're leaving here with.
Well, probably the hardest feeling is that we have so much to do yet, and survivors who are so patiently working hard to try to get to that point where they can feel that reconciliation is ongoing or is achievable, are still feeling that there's still some things that need to be uncovered and discovered, and that it's not that they're losing hope, they just want to be able to start turning the corner, and I don't think they feel that they're there yet. But at the same time, the one thing that I said at the end of the TRC with the final report recently is that it's going to take us a number of generations to get there, and we have to understand that.
When you say it'll take a number of generations to get there, and your son, who's been with us all day, I know your granddaughter 16. Sarah was giving a speech today in front of a whole bunch of people. What do you think Sarah will be able to finish that you started?
Well, that's a little hard to say because I think everybody has to pick their priority. And I know Sarah's priority is largely around the environment and the water and taking care of the earth so that it's there for future generations. Yep. And I know with Sarah, Nimijin Nivas, I think that she will want to be at the lead of that discussion, that dialogue around taking care of the earth, protecting the earth for future generations. And to her, when she sees things that are happening that to her are going to damage the environment even worse, she wants to get involved in that. So I think that'll be her focus. But at the same time, I think she will never lose sight of the fact that the survivors are part of her life too.
Indeed.
She has grandparents who are there at residential school, and she knows, of course, of the work that I did with the TRC, and she was present for much of that.
Indeed. Justice St. Clair, Nigan, thank you both. There's so much more work to do, but we appreciate you being with us.
Hello, I'm Arthi Pol. You're watching CBC News Network. Today is a day of